I'm really nothing like Miranda. She's single, she's searching, she's a workaholic, she's not a mother, she's sort of commitment phobic. Like, I was in a long-term relationship and I had a child already. Hi, this is Cynthia Nixon. Today I'm looking back at some moments that have shaped my career and my identity. This is Becoming Cynthia Nixon. So this is me, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Maya Danziger. We're all playing sisters in a TV movie that was called My Body, My Child that we did in 1982. I wouldn't know that offhand, but I see it on the screen. We shot in Nashville for 3 weeks, and Sarah Jessica and I were there. We knew each other a bit from auditions and from other stuff that we had done together, and we were both there with our mothers, so we hung out a lot. And sometimes Sarah and I talk about there was a Houston's there, and neither family had a lot of money. So we had to go out to eat because we were in a hotel room. So it seemed very glamorous. We would go to this Houston's and we would eat these fried zucchini sticks, which she and I still remember to this day. Both of our mothers were the primary parent in our life and very level-headed people and very education focused. There are a lot of child actors who don't make the transition to being adult actors, or lots of worse stuff than that happens to them along the way. But I think both of our mothers were very level-headed and very disciplined, and I think it was an enormous difference that means that Sarah Jessica and I are still working today and have happy, full lives. Here we go, let's see.
How does it happen that 4 such smart women have nothing to talk about but boyfriends? It's like 7th grade with bank accounts. What about us? What we think, we feel, we know, Christ. Does it always have to be about them?
Miranda's a character who's just aged well. She was cynical and she was very strident and argumentative. And I think she's definitely softened and deepened over the years. We've seen a lot more parts of her. But I also think that a lot of the stuff that she was complaining about, the culture has moved and is standing pretty much now where Miranda was standing, however, 25 years ago.
Sid and I aren't really a couple. In fact, we're not even really lesbians. Well, Sid is. I'm not.
Pat was just gonna have me in a regular Miranda outfit. But I was like, no, Miranda's gonna go for it. Miranda's gonna, try and look the part. So she's gonna be all but in drag. I was the one who was very assertive about wanting to wear a suit and a tie and all this stuff. So I think maybe if Miranda had been dressed as herself, Sid might have been dressed more butch, but I think then Pat saw that as a chance to do a fun flip. I think that when you look at Sex and the City now, I think many of the queer characters, particularly more minor characters, are more stereotypical than I think we wish that they were. But I guess my overwhelming sense about the show at the time was I wasn't focused on that. What I was focused on was what an incredibly white show it was. So that to me seemed front and center. As queer people forever, because we didn't see representations of ourselves, we've been forced to translate, straight characters that represent some part of us. And I think the 4 women in Sex and the City, well, they're trying to chart their own course. They have lots of sex partners. They're not necessarily marriage-minded. They're not child-minded, which I think was a great, feminist departure. But I think queer people across the board also saw themselves in the show because these were women who weren't looking to live heteronormative, cookie-cutter lives. They were on an adventure to discover themselves. This was an enormous deal in my life. I had been nominated for a Tony once before, but the idea that I was gonna win one was just amazing. I don't know, I see now that I did not thank Christine in my acceptance speech at all. I can be a very literal person, and I was gonna thank the professional people in my life, but other awards that I have won later, I now understand it's really important to thank your partner. Lisa Crone, who's an amazing writer and actor, who was nominated opposite me in this category, we hung out at the party later, and she said, of course, I knew you were gonna win, and I would have liked to win, but getting to see you kiss your butch girlfriend on national TV, she said, that was just, how could I feel anything but thrilled about this? So Sex and the City had ended, it was 2004, and it was the final Emmy Awards that we were going to, and I won the Emmy. I was so startled and thrilled and was not expecting it at all. And right after that, there was a bunch of press inquiry about asking whether I was dating a woman. When Christine and I had first started dating, there was like a little inquiry, and then we just hired a publicist and said, like, nothing. Because the relationship was so new, it seemed like it would be strange to sort of embrace it and, do red carpets together and stuff like that. But by the time this happened, we were really kind of in a committed relationship. So we had fired that publicist and said, like, that is not going to work. My manager, who I thank in the Tony speech that when I won my Tony, Emily Gerson, she found me a publicist who was herself a lesbian who was in Los Angeles, Kelly Bush. And there was such an enormous amount of press inquiry, we didn't know what to do. So we called Kelly, who I'd never met, on the phone, and we laid out the whole situation for her. She listened, and then she said, well, why don't we confirm? And it was like, somebody told me that there actually was a Santa Claus, or you could fly if you wanted to. We confirmed, and then it was like all hell broke loose. Kelly and everybody working with Kelly really just steered us through that storm and said, we're going to confirm it, and we're not going to talk about it right now. Maybe it would have had an effect on my career if I was 22. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten cast in Sex and the City. Who knows? It's impossible to know. But for people like Anne Heche, I think it certainly had an enormous negative impact on her career. I think she would have been a big movie star. I like how messy my hair is. I love the Steve and Miranda relationship. First of all, the original show was about people with so much disposable income, and Steve was like our one working class guy. Early on, Steve and Miranda were walking down the street together. It was like the first walk and talk they had. What's happening? Maybe she's telling him she's pregnant, I can't remember. They had me in a pair of heels, and it was this moment where it was like, oh, well, in a pair of heels, I'm taller than David Eigenberg. Do we need to change the shoes? That was a discussion that we had. And we were all like, why? Why can't she be taller than him? It's cute. Miranda's very, the way is barred. Like, she's got sentries at the gates. And it took somebody as wily and as gentle, I think, and as persistent as Steve to sort of get around all her defense mechanisms and be the person who could bring out the parts of her that were definitely asleep and that she thought might be dead, like the maternal part of her, the domestic part of her, the part of her that actually might want to share her life with someone and not just have a series of one-night stands. Miranda's the alpha in that relationship, and nobody ever said different.
We are to pray for the repose of our late pastor's soul.
Doesn't that rather depend on where it's gone?
We shall become fast friends.
I'm playing Emily Dickinson, and I'm there with my sister, who's played by Jennifer Ely. Emily is kind of dazzled by not only the woman's wit and seeming radicalism, but by her, her joie de vivre and her spirit and her confidence, I guess. Terence Davies, who wrote and directed this film, is a queer British filmmaker. And Emily is not queer in this version particularly. To label her as bisexual would be a very anachronistic term, but my belief is that she is bisexual and that had great romantic attachments to men and to women, whether those were consummated or not. Jodie May, who plays her sister-in-law, who is the person, if she had a lesbian relationship, it seems very clear that that was the most important one. That is not the case in our film, but the two women have a late night conversation. Her sister-in-law speaks about not desiring her husband and it being very difficult for her. And the two women share this kind of unspoken understanding about it. To me, at least, that is the one nod to Emily being queer. I don't think it necessarily makes her gay, but I think she has a girl crush on this character in the scene. Yeah, I think she definitely does.
And I see the future of the Democratic Party in this room tonight. The future of the Democratic Party is young. It is diverse. It is progressive.
I completely stand by these words. This is the future of the Democratic Party. Weirdly, in the first week, if not the first day, I think the first day of our campaign, Christine Quinn, who is a lesbian who was a former chair of the city council, labeled me an unqualified lesbian, which was astonishing. And her point was that she had run for mayor and not been elected, and she was qualified, that an unqualified lesbian did not have a chance to be elected governor of New York State. So this made for endless fun campaign fodder and buttons and bags. And in my defense, the paperwork for becoming a qualified lesbian is very, very lengthy. And I'm happy to be called a lesbian. I'm happy to be called bisexual. I myself prefer queer just because I feel like, I don't know, bisexual seems very pedantic and academic or something. I just want to, be like, I'm with them. I'm over here, There are times when I feel gayer or less gay. Calling me a lesbian when I'm running for governor of New York State, that's fine, that's cool.
You just let it slide into your mouth. It's like making love to the ocean.
I've known Sarah for years from her time in New York. It's always intimidating to walk onto a set that isn't your set, and I had been away for quite a while. I had never done a part like this. I was intimidated, and Sarah was so lovely to me, but also she wasn't the Sarah that I knew, which surprised me. Sarah in regular life is just hilarious. She just has you in stitches 24 hours a day. I've been acting since I was 12, and I never do anything long-term that isn't in New York. This was the one exception. I was like, first of all, how can I let this pass? Such a juicy part, playing opposite Sarah, for Ryan Murphy, all these amazing actresses, a queer love story, a period queer love story. And also, I feel like Ryan Murphy, not only did he offer me all those wonderful things, but he offered me a lifeline of sorts. You take a year out of your life and run for governor and do these things, you don't know kind of what acting career there's gonna be waiting for you when you get back. But Ryan Murphy offered me a job that would have been a wonderful job to be offered at any time. But to offer it to me in that moment, I will never forget that he did that. Michael Patrick King was very opposed to my wearing this outfit. He said the whole thing about Miranda is that Miranda was stuck and miserable and her life was just going nowhere. And he said, what does she need to be liberated from if she's wearing this hot mama outfit? Luckily, they didn't really have any other choices that he could make a case for as being acceptable. So I wore it. He said, you were totally right about that. If she wasn't looking so great, she probably wouldn't have the confidence to do it. When we were talking about doing this new series, all of us had a lot of conversations. A lot of the conversations were about the lack of diversity on the original show, whether you're talking race or ethnicity or gender or class. Kind of in early conversations, Michael Patrick King said to me, well, do you want Miranda to be queer? And I was like, I could do whatever, but why not, right? If we're trying to move forward, here's a really obvious way that we could and should move forward. And if we don't, aren't people gonna wonder why? You can bring in queer characters, but you got a homegrown queer character. Why not use the native plant? So when the original series was on, the press would always ask us how we're like our characters. And I would always say, I'm really nothing like Miranda. She's single, she's searching, she's a workaholic, she's not a mother, she's sort of commitment phobic. I was in a long-term relationship and I had a child already. But then when we were finally in our last season, a reporter asked me this question and said, which way is she? And I said, I'm just like Miranda in every way. And I do feel like by giving Miranda a partner, by giving her a child, by giving her a home that was really a home, not just a place to live, And by allowing her insecurity or fragility to be more available, she became so much closer to me. But then also maybe in my growing up, because, we age, things change, but also in my proximity to her, I think I became more confident. The latent aggression in me was allowed to flower. I don't feel closer to her now that her queerness is part of her storyline. Well, I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but I'm a person in a long-term relationship and Miranda's not.
Tell me you like it, tell me not to stop.
I like it. Oh, please, Jay.
All the guys on Sex and the City, Mr. Big included, they're always like the second fiddle to the woman. And for the first time, you had two major characters that were equally important, that were having sex with each other. So I think that felt really different to me. The sex scenes don't feel that much. I mean, this one was standing up. I've directed 2 episodes this year. It's very intimidating to move from being an actor to being a director, but if there was ever going to be a warm bath way of doing it, it would be on a show in which you were already acting and which you had, a character that you've been doing for 25 years with people who've been your, compadres for that amount of time, and all that love and all that support. Thank you for revisiting these milestones with me. This has been Becoming with Cynthia Nixon.